So 2019 was a really hard year in my life and went through a lot of really difficult transitions and just some hard stuff. I was really on the heels of just a really complicated, complex, difficult time of my life. Having just going through a divorce, and that led to an opportunity to take a sabbatical from kind of ministry and really just a break from life in general. The last thing that anybody would suggest for me at that time in my life was to be interested in a gal.
So I was previously married and then divorced, and I kind of had a plan in my head, and it was that, I was going to be single for a couple years and figure out myself and just really grow myself and grow my relationship with the Lord. And then, he would bring someone into my life, and that was 12 years prior. It'd been something that I'd been praying for a really long time, and I've gone through many different stages of that, and I kind of wrestled with God and got mad for a long time, and then thought, well, maybe I'm called to singleness. And I was actually in a place, probably one of the best places in my life at the time when I met Thad. I actually felt like I had been called to singleness, and I was just really excited about it. I was in a great place emotionally, and I was in a great place health-wise, and I had flexibility. I had pretty good financial stability, and I was just really excited to go, okay, God, what do you have? And so I was just actually really fired up to see what God had in store next.
I was able to go with awesome support from my church and our elders and the ministry that I'm a part of. And so I was able to go to Canada and picked a place I've never been in my entire life, somewhere I've always wanted to go, Banff. I couldn't have been more excited to just have some downtime and a break. I was really going to Banff to just spend time to reconnect with the Lord, just kind of get some rest and just get re-grounded in my walk with God. And after about a week of just solo life and quiet walks by myself and hikes by myself, I was really looking for some people time. And so one of the things I was looking forward to is just going to church. And so I was really eager to do that and did what everybody does when you're trying to find a good church in town. I Googled it and I picked a church that had really cool pictures on their website. It's real spiritual. And so went to church, and it was just really a blessing to just unplug and just be a regular guy going to church. About partway through the first worship song, I could notice that somebody off to my left had come and sat in the row that I was sitting in, and I could hear just a really pretty voice.
I was getting into church, and I was late, and I was definitely running behind. I sat down where I normally sat, and I noticed that there was someone else in that row, which isn't unusual because we get a lot of visitors at Banff Park Church. And there was just something different. This big feeling came over me. I can't really even describe it, but it kind of came over my whole body, and it was just really strange because I would consider myself a fairly emotionally stable person, and typically I'm pretty aware of things that are kind of going on, and it just came out of nowhere, completely unexpected, and I had no idea why.
And then as we got through with the worship time, there was a little meet and greet. And so got to meet some of the folks around me, and then turned and was able to see that this pretty voice was coming from a pretty lady, which caught my attention. And so I just said hi to her awkwardly and just, I have no idea what the deal was, but just for some reason, just had this sense that this is somebody I'm supposed to know.
When the time to greet people came around, I had found out a little bit about him, and but still the feeling just was there, and it just kept getting more and more intense. And I was kind of freaked out because I was like, I don't know what this is. This is just really weird. And but I really just felt a huge connection with them, and I didn't want that opportunity, whatever it was, to pass.
At the end of the service, there was some time where we visited and met people and that kind of thing, and gave me an opportunity to talk to the folks around and kind of try and be coy and work my way around to talking to her and getting to know her a little bit more. Fortunately, she was pretty outgoing and friendly and just easy to talk to, and we connected and just visited a little bit about interests and things, and she shared that From time to time, she comes to Spokane and down that direction for conferences. And then maybe in the summer when she came down, she'd come check out our church in Pullman. To which I did what every smooth guy does. I gave her my business card and sealed the deal with the business card to prove that I really did have a job, I guess. I don't know. But and from there, it was just sort of like, hey, who knows where that'll go? I have no clue, and just kind of left it be and headed on my way from church that day.
I wasn't ready to connect right then just because, like I said, there was a lot of change happening in my life at the time, and I was just really wanted to focus on that, and I really didn't know anything about this person, and there was this strange feeling, and so I thought, okay, I should just kind of pause and connect with this person in a couple months down the road once things, kind of chill out a little bit. So I had asked what church he was at because I had found out in the conversation that he was a pastor at a church down in the States, and I thought, yeah, I'll just pop by, in the summer and we could connect then. I felt really good about that situation because I had his contact details, but he didn't have mine. So I was like, okay, this is good. I can reach out when I'm ready, because I definitely wasn't looking for a relationship in my life at the point.
Hi! Oh, there you are, the hairdresser. How's it going? How are you getting your hair done?
I don't know, Diane's going to surprise me. She's going to make it look awesome.
Oh, it looks wonderful. You look beautiful.
Yeah, you.
Well, have a wonderful day, Kaila. I'm thinking of you.
All right, we'll see you here. So we'll get stuff soon.
Love you.
Love you, Mom.
Bye-bye.
As much as I was trying to get moving on with exploring and off to my next hike or next adventure, I just kept thinking about her. And to be completely candid, I jumped on Facebook and tried to find her. It turns out Kaila in Banff is difficult to find.
It's actually pretty hard to describe what I felt. Some people might call it Twitter-pated, but I was just really confused, honestly, because this just felt like a huge curveball, and I knew nothing about this person other than they were a pastor at a church called RLC in Washington, and that was about it. But also, I just knew that God was at work somehow, and there was something big happening.
While I was at the church, I had connected with Greg, the pastor there. So I reached back out to him and set up a time to meet, like that following Tuesday, I think it was. And we were gonna have coffee. And of course, he thinks we're just having coffee because we're a couple of pastors and we're gonna talk shop and just encourage each other. And for sure, that was part of my motivation. But for the real behind the scenes was I was also trying to figure out how to find out who this Kaila was, because there was something that just kept stirring. There was something in my gut that was just like, you got to know this girl. There's something about this girl. And so we went and have coffee, and I meet with him downtown Banff in this cool little place. And I don't know why, but I was pretty embarrassed and didn't want him to know that I was trying to find out who she was. I probably should have just come out and asked. And so I said, hey, you have some really amazing people in your church. For example, there's that couple that sat behind me. What were their names? Cynthia and something. And then I was like, oh yeah. And then I met Ernie, and then I met this other Clara, and I was like, oh, and who was the other girl that was sitting beside me? And he's like, oh yeah, that's Kaila. And I'm like, oh, great. And I ended up wrapping up my time at coffee with him and went back, and I knew no more about her than I did before I had went to have coffee with him. And so I felt like a teenager trying to track down a girl that had come to town or something. And it was just sort of fun and a little bit embarrassing, to be honest with you, but I didn't really know what else to do. So I was trying to figure out what was God up to? Why is this girl so interesting to me? Like, what is going on that I can't get her out of my mind?
So it was this tension of, this is really exciting, but it's not really what I thought the plan was. And I was actually really okay with what I thought the plan was. So there was a lot of back and forth, a lot of trying to stay out of my head. I have a lot of journals from that day forward, just asking God to, just for me to stay focused on him and just to really surrender to what he was doing, because it seemed pretty crazy and outrageous. And I really had no clue what was going on.
I was really going to Banff to just spend time to reconnect with the Lord, just kind of get some rest and just get re-grounded in my walk with God personally. The last thing on that anybody would suggest for me at that time in my life was to be interested in a gal. And I knew that. And so I'm sort of having this real open conversation with the Lord about, okay, God, but this is not a good time. I don't know if you know what's going on in my life, but this is not a good time. And do you have any idea what all the people would think? Like, if anybody knew, I don't want to go anywhere I'm not supposed to go. I don't want to do anything God doesn't want me to do. And yet it's like, why am I still interested? Just as I'm talking to the Lord and talking to myself about whether or not this is wise, whether or not this is a good idea, there's just something in me that was just sort of like reminding me that it's okay, right? Like, I'm not doing anything I'm not supposed to be doing. I'm not doing anything immoral or unethical. It's okay to just reach out and trust that God's not going to lead me into territory I shouldn't go. But the stuff that was the tension was the what are other people going to think? And the stuff that was giving me the pause and the it's okay, like you're okay with me, was the sense of like God the Father just giving me this guidance of like, yeah, I got you. This is going to be all right. You're not doing something you shouldn't be doing, and like lean on me, not on what other people are going to think about you. And so that just sort of helped me navigate in the beginning of whether or not I should pursue. At this point, I barely had a conversation with her. We're not talking about pursuing a girlfriend. I don't even know what God is up to. It was just new territory to reach out to a gal. And so when it came to figuring out how to get to know her, it took a little bit of work. I actually had to track down Greg, the pastor at the Banff Park Church, and looked up his friends on Facebook. And sure enough, I found out that she was one of his friends on Facebook, and her name was not spelled how I would expect a Kaila to be spelled, which made it understandable why she was so hard to find on Facebook.
One night, I got a friend request and a message from Thad. And I did have to wonder how he found me, because it's pretty hard to find me on Facebook, just the way my name is spelt. But there was obviously a connection, and then we both really felt it. And so I was nervous and excited and really didn't know what to do about that.
Felt a little bit like a teenager, I'm not gonna lie. A little bit of adrenaline pumping through the veins of, is she gonna respond, and is, what's gonna come of it? And it just, all the fun, just daydreaming.
He had asked about different hikes in the area, and then just kind of threw it out there to say, hey, would you happen to have a chance to go for a hike before I leave? And this was Wednesday night, and he was leaving on Saturday. And I had a crazy week that week, and so I'm like, oh, I really want to, but I don't know if this is gonna happen, but I don't want to feel like I'm brushing him off. And so I was looking through my schedule, and it was this perfect opening, I guess. So I had about an hour and a half window, and it would only work at this one spot on this one highway. And so I just said, yeah, I can meet you at this time, at this place, and this is the hike we'd be doing. Does that work? And of course, he had no idea how crazy my schedule was, or how perfect that was, that worked just right there. And so he said yes.
It was just a ball of nerves in my stomach, excited, nervous. I meet with new people all the time that I've never met, and I have no problem meeting with anybody, anywhere, any place, no nerves, no nothing. But there was something about meeting with her that had me feeling like a 12-year-old kid.
I just had all sorts of things going through my head. I don't know, maybe as girls do, overthink things. So definitely some nervousness, but also excitement. I just really wanted to see what this was all about and what he was all about, and just spend some time together. So it was a little bit of both. And then we just started hiking, and we hadn't gotten too far, maybe a couple hundred meters into the hike, and we'd already done like the pleasantries. It was a little bit awkward. We could tell it was like we were both looking forward to it, but the first little part was a little bit awkward. And then he just said, like, what's your God story?
And it was interesting because she kind of chuckled, and I was like, well, what's funny? And she's like, oh, I'm usually the one that does that to other people.
I don't like small talk. I don't like talking about just kind of non-important stuff. And I was like, okay, I can talk about this. This is something that's really important to me. And I love getting to know people at this level, and I think it's really important. And so it just really helped, and we just had an awesome conversation.
So she just started to unpack and just open up and talk to me about what it was like growing up, and shared some pretty transparent stuff with me. And as we're hiking and just kind of talking and walking together, and I'm just thinking, man, this girl is really real. She's real transparent, real vulnerable, being super honest with me, and that was really attractive. And she had a God story, and so it was just really cool to hear. So by the time we got up to the end of this canyon, it was sort of like, man, I feel like I know a bunch about where you grew up, and I know where you went to Bible camp as a kid, and I know some of the people that you liked, and I know some of the most tragic things that have happened in your life, and I know a bunch about your dad, I know a bunch about your mom, and I know a bunch about some of the friends that you have and the kind of things that you like to do. And it was like, just like, wow.
It was just this, it was just wow. Like, it was just kind of wow after checkbox after this is awesome, and just felt like we had known each other for a really long time and could relate. And it was just so easy to have that conversation about really cool stuff. So as we were coming back, there's a lot of things going on in my mind because I really enjoyed spending time with him, and I just felt like this really deep connection that I hadn't felt with anyone. But then part of some of where his story of where he was at that point had me really confused in terms of, okay, God, like, is this someone that I'm supposed to be spending more time with because I really enjoy spending time with him, but I'm not really sure kind of where he's at in terms of life and relationship, and maybe I'm just supposed to be a friend or someone that, you know, has walked a similar journey in terms of like relationship and divorce. And obviously with him leaving the next day, it just brought in a lot of uncertainty as to, okay, what is this and what is it going to be and how is this going to go? But it was awkward because I think at the end, neither of us really wanted it to be over. I had to go because I had to go teach a class. And so as I was walking away from just saying goodbye and just walking towards my car, he kind of just blurted out, so do you have any dinner plans? And I had to kind of chuckle, but I was glad because I was like, oh, okay, well, he obviously likes hanging out with me too.
It was just like this gut thing in me of like, don't let this girl get away without getting to know her a little bit more. And so I just kind of threw it out there. She was like, yeah, I've got a really busy day and I got a bunch going on. Like, could it be maybe flexible? I'll message you later and we'll kind of see if it works out. And so I get in the car, not really sure if she wants to go to dinner or not. I mean, she kind of gave me an answer that was like a easy out. Like, she could have just as easily blew me off as not. So I really wasn't sure how it was going to pan out.
So I just messaged him after I was finished teaching. I said, okay, I'm done. Does dinner still work? And he said, yes. So we went to a place called the Iron Goat, mostly because I asked him what kind of foods he wanted to eat, and I gave him a couple choices, and he picked steak.
She's messaging me and saying like, hey, I'm getting here, and do you want me to get a table or something? And I'm still in Banff, and it's like a half hour away from where I'm supposed to be to dinner, and I'm not even like barely leaving the place yet, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm late and I'm behind and I'm never late and I'm gonna make a bad impression, and just nervous like crazy. I mean, I had not been on a date with someone that was not my wife in probably like over 22 years. And so it just felt so exciting and so petrifying and nerve-wracking all at the same time.
He must have asked where I was sitting and described me, and came into the table. He was looking a little bit nervous, and it was just a little bit awkward. I mean, we'd had a great conversation. We'd been talking so much on the hike, but then it was like, okay, well now where do we start? And it's face to face and, in a restaurant, and it's just a little bit more, intimate, I guess.
just sitting down to dinner, man, I was so nervous. I don't know if she knew how nervous I was, but I was probably a little bit fidgety. I probably talked way too much. I probably talked way too fast. I don't know. I was excited, but I was nervous. And so we just kind of stayed on safe subjects. Conversation was super easy, but at the same time, there was definitely this just constant battle going on of like, am I supposed to be here? Am I supposed to be doing this? What is she thinking right now? You know, what should I be thinking right now?
Definitely during the conversation and during dinner, I just really felt like, I think this is who I'm supposed to be with. Someone many years ago had got me to write down what my ideal person was. And it was just more about values and characteristics. And there'd been a lot of checks in the box. But it doesn't look anything the way that I thought it was supposed to look. I mean, he's in a really different season of life right now and, has a lot going on, and he's from the States and he's a pastor and he's leaving tomorrow. And so there was just all this stuff. And then I'm like, okay, I don't get this. I don't get this at all. So looking back, I think it was just God's way of helping me to continue to rely on him and saying, hey, this probably doesn't make sense, so I need you to dig in and stay close.
We had a great time. We had a nice dinner. And then it was like the hike. We were rolling up to the end of dinner and we kind of stretched it as long as we can stretch it. And it's like, all right, it's time to go. And I know I have to leave the next day. And there's this like, man, I don't know. I'm not ready for this to be done. But I know at this point, there's nothing appropriate beyond this. Like, I know this is the end. And so I just am like, all right, well, we're just going to have to say goodbye and just trust that God's going to lead the way from here. I don't know what that's even going to be like. And so then there was this awkward, let's go walk to our cars. And I'm like, do I walk her to my car? Like, I have been 20 something years deep where I'm never alone with another woman that wasn't my wife. I'm very careful about appearances because of the ministry that I've been involved in, and just deeply respect other women and the relationships that they're in. And I just care about appearances. And because of the story it tells and the assumptions people make. And so I just have this awkward, like, can't remember the last time I walked a girl to her car. And so to be honest with you, I was terrible at it. I didn't walk her to her car. I was so nervous. I got to my car and I was like, okay, we'll see you later. And I kind of reached out to shake her hand.
He went to shake my hand and then I just hugged him, and that was also really awkward. But I just hug everyone. I'm a huggy person. So, and then I walked to my car, and I really didn't know what was going to happen from that point.
Okay, 12:45 at Conoco, and let's be super. Okay.
Yeah, well, we actually had, this is the one we initially wanted to come to, but when we saw it, it looked like, when we were on the road, the main road, it looked like it was on someone's properties. And then on the way back, let's just see. I mean, if there's signs, we won't go, but if there isn't, then we can just go. And we were driving down here, and then we came around the corner, and we're like, yes, this is it. So, yeah. It was awesome.
I don't know what this is exactly. I would say this is 130 to 150 feet probably.
Yeah.
That night we just sort of kind of wrapped up, probably stayed up too late, messaging back and forth on Facebook Messenger and sharing stories and different details. And finally it was like, all right, we need to go to bed and I've got to get up and leave in the morning. And so just kind of pulling out of Banff the next morning of like really feeling like God's showing me a lot of stuff about me personally, reminding me about my calling, reminding me about the way he's made me. And I've been in ministry so long that it's easy to become a pastor as a vocation and forget that I'm a Christian as a guy. And I felt like in my time in Banff, I just got reminded by God and given permission by God to just be all in being me. And the whole time I'm also wrestling with this tension that I've met this girl and it was unexpected. And, I didn't know if I would ever meet someone again. I hadn't really given it a whole lot of thought at all at this point, except the only thought I had given it is that it'll probably be a long ways off. And yet here it was right away.
we were having some really good conversations about getting to know each other and the things we liked and the things that were important to us and our values and how we thought and how we process things. And it was just awesome because it was just so connected. But there was some things that that were just like, that I was wrestling with.
I just had no doubt that we were supposed to meet and that he was up to something. I didn't really know what. And so I wasn't second guessing meeting her or liking her or wanting to get to know her more, but I was really worried about like, what in the world is anybody gonna think about me? And man, one of the first things I did was I just had to sit down and talk to somebody. I needed some counsel. And just as a Christian guy and a pastor, like I want somebody to know. And so I reached out to one of my elders and good friend and his wife, Ron and Judy, and just laid it all out, told them every little detail of everything, 100% transparent, and just said, this is what's going on. What are you hearing? What kind of advice do you have for me? And they were affirming, like, we do feel like God's at work in this, and we do sense that God's up to something, and that's pretty amazing, and we can see kind of your heart pick up, and that's exciting for us because we love you and we care about you, but we also want to be kind of counsel you to pause, right? And sort of had this theme that came through of yes, but not yet.
We both felt a little bit similar, where just getting this idea of God saying yes, but not yet. And it was just something that kept coming up because he was clearly up to something, but there was a lot of things that weren't adding up and didn't make a lot of sense. And so just based on that and where Thad was in his life at the time, we had just agreed to take some time and do the things that we needed to do in our own lives.
It was a really uncomfortable conversation, and we ended up setting up a time to FaceTime, and that was going to be kind of our last time to talk in person, and then we were just going to both agreed to just pause. Again, a lot like the hike and a lot like the dinner, like there's this tension where we both don't want it to be over, but at the same time we feel like we need to, and it's the right thing to do. And she basically just said, hey, you know, I'm not going anywhere. I've been waiting for the right guy for a long time. And if you're the right guy, then God's got this under control. I don't know, but I'm not going anywhere. I wasn't looking before you showed up, and I'm not looking now. I'm gonna let God sort of take care of this. And it just gave me a real peace of mind of like, yep, okay, we're on the same page. Like, this is right.
For me, it was just really staying out of my head, reminding myself every day. I have so many journals and things that I wrote during that time of just reminding me to stay the course, to focus on me, for God to bring the things into my life that I needed to grow, where I needed to grow in terms of what he was doing. And so there was just all these different confirmations that this was a really important time, and it was a very necessary time of preparing our lives and our hearts for whatever he was going to do next.
You know, it was an opportunity for me to just kind of get to know myself again, like who am I and how did God make me and what am I called to do and what are my passions and interests, and just as a single guy, just me, Christian Thad, not me, Pastor Thad, and just spent the next couple of months just really digging into that. And some of it was exciting and some of it was terrible and nerve-wracking, but it was just a season of really trusting God one day at a time and just trying to be faithful to listen and follow his lead. So that season came to an end, and so I was eager to reach out, and that started with messages again, and then we started this letter writing campaign. Just a good long season there of just really pouring out life to each other, sharing life with each other, yes, on the internet, but a lot of just old-fashioned writing letters.
Once we had reconnected again, I was coming down for a conference in Spokane, partly because I wanted to see the speakers, but also because I wanted him to get around that environment so that he understood what I was about. And so I had planned a trip to come down, chatted with him about it, and he was excited to kind of see what I did and how my life worked and what things were important to me. And so we planned that trip. We were really excited about it. We were really excited to get to see each other. I was really excited to kind of take that next step of, is he going to understand this? And is this going to be something that that's going to work, moving forward? And so it came down, and then we basically get the announcement that the conference canceled and COVID hit and pretty much everything is shutting down. We're like, oh, now what?
And so all of a sudden we find ourselves with rooms booked in Spokane for a weekend and no plans. And so we did what any two people would do that really like each other and are excited to see each other. We just spent the whole weekend together. We did all kinds of fun stuff, like nothing really important. We walked around the mall, we went to some movies, we drove all over the place. We just spent tons of time exploring and talking and sitting in coffee shops and staying up way too late before we went back to our little separate places we were staying, and just had an awesome weekend. Getting to know each other and definitely starting to feel the electricity and the sparks flying. And we were definitely feeling like it was more than just, hey, this is a really cool person. It was like, oh, I like this girl. I like this girl a lot. I want to hold this girl's hand and I want to kiss her face. And it was great. It was a super fun weekend, and it will always be an awesome memory for us.
So over the course of the weekend, it was just one thing after another. It was, we like the same Subway sandwiches and we walk the same pace, which is uncommon because we both walk really fast, which is not normal for people. And there were just so many things we had in common, which isn't always the most important, but the fact that we did share so much in common and then we had all the other important characteristics and values just made it really awesome and just really fun to be together, and it just felt really natural, and it was, fantastic.
We had a great time getting to know each other, but beyond getting to know each other, we did spend a little bit of time smooching, and we ended up parking one time. Yes, I'll tell this story. We ended up parking one time and sitting in the car, smooching like a couple of teenagers in the Spokane Falls Community College parking lot. And we're just, we're just, doing what you do. And the security guard comes and pounds on the window and says, "Excuse me, you guys can't be here. You're not allowed to be in here." And it scared the heck out of both of us. We laughed so hard. Oh my gosh, we had laughed so hard. So embarrassed, and it was awesome and terrible all at the same time. It was sort of like, I think, God's way of looking out for us, of like, and you need to be done, right? Like, it's time to call her quits for the night. And so I took her home like a good gentleman and dropped her off and went home. But fun memories on that weekend for sure.
Once I was back in Canada, there was a lot of change with COVID and things like that, but we were still really excited. No one really knew what that meant. And so we had plans, like he was going to come up and visit and I was going to come down, and we had bought tickets and concert things, and we were really excited to continue spending that time together when we could. But time went on and the border just kept staying closed. We just really asked ourselves, like, is this something we want to continue? Because we just were really questioning, is God putting the brakes on this? Is this, what's happening? And so we had to have some really heart-to-hearts.
I got to the point where I was pretty much kind of resolving that we might just have to call it quits, and it might not be a thing. I mean, maybe we're just going to be good friends. And about the time we even started talking about that, God sort of came to the rescue and showed up in a really awesome way. We found out that it was okay for Canadians to fly, and you couldn't drive, but you could fly. And so it was step one, was we found a way in. And then after that, we found out that there was some like airline mile tickets she had, and so there was a way to pay for it. And then next after that was like she was working for a place. They had decided to change up their plans and take a 3-week vacation, which would allow Kaila to come down for a week and then go home and quarantine for a couple of weeks, which was a big deal. And then her employer got a hold of her and just said, "Hey, so we're gonna just pay you, and as if you're here, because it just feels like the right thing to do." And they just really treated her well. And it was just like God just really jumped back in the middle of our story and went, "Nope, you guys were taking the reins there for a minute, and the way you were going is not the way this story was gonna go. From the time that I messaged her, kind of saying, hey, I'm thinking maybe we need to slow down and just like move more towards friends. It was like 3 days later and she was in Pullman. As we started spending more time together, I knew that this was the girl for me.
Come on out. Yep.
That's a huge elephant.
So here we are in December now in the story. We're a year into knowing each other. So I made plans to ask her, and she had no idea, which was so cool. So I made arrangements to do a waterfall extravaganza day, and we started off at one waterfall that was frozen, and then we went to another waterfall, and I had 3 or 4 in mind, and I had a place in mind at the very last waterfalls. Big, beautiful frozen waterfall. It had this big, huge slab of rock in front of it, and it was a perfect place to propose. And so we pull up, and there's some vehicles there, and I'm a little bit bummed. And then as we're getting ready to leave, another truck pulls up, and then another car pulls up, and dogs get out, and kids get out, and people get out, and I'm just like rolling my eyes like on the inside going, this is not going according to plan, right? And then I listen and I hear a voice. I'm like, I recognize that voice. I turn around, it's my son, Zach. And he's like, holy smokes. Well, I had told all my kids about my plan. I had talked with them at length about proposing to Kaila, and they're excited. And so he looks at me and goes, is this the time? And I'm like, don't say anything, right? Like, don't blow it. She doesn't know yet. And so, like everything in our relationship, it did not go according to plan. And so it was the key word of 2020. We pivoted, right? And I proposed differently than I had in mind, but nonetheless, that was the day.
I still said yes.
Kaila, I have been so blessed to meet you, get to know you, and just this fun adventure we've been on this last year, becoming great friends and falling in love.
When I was thinking of all the things, my heart definitely swelled with gratitude for all that you are and all that you do, and the precious gift that God has given to me when He gave me you.
It's so easy to look back and just see how God had provided just the perfect window and the perfect time. Just how God orchestrated us being in the exact same place at the exact same time, like God was at work.
Now, in hindsight, going, wow, like, what if all that was to help me prepare for this?
We know without a doubt that we wouldn't be where we're at if it wasn't for God's intervention and God at work in our lives. So we're excited to see how He keeps working in our lives.
The fact that He can do things like this is just, yeah, it's pretty incredible.
Thad and Kaila would like to welcome you to this safe place. They have gone to great heights to bring this to you. Well, you are probably watching this from a comfortable chair in a warm room. I wish you could all be here right now, seated on this trestle with us. When Thad said that this wedding would be taking place on a trestle, I said, I don't do trestles. And then he said, well, the only option would be to do this out of an airplane skydiving. So I chose the trestle. Having heard portions of Thad's and Kaila's stories, we could witness the redeeming power of Jesus taking the hurts, losses, and shame from the past and giving them renewed hope for their future together. I woke up with a picture that the Lord kind of downloaded into my mind's eye of two panes of glass, but then they were shattered, and the two kind of heaps of shard glass. And I saw Jesus taking a piece of glass from this part here and another piece here and putting them together into one masterpiece. And so this is a masterpiece that he's doing here today. Jesus can make all things new if given the opportunity. And it is with this new, fresh sense of hope and love that they commit themselves to one another with their vows. So Thad, if you would like to say your vows to Kaila now, please.
Finally, the preacher gets to preach.
Hopefully it's not a sermon.
So Kaila, I have been so blessed to meet you, get to know you, and just this fun adventure we've been on this last year, becoming great friends and falling in love, and it's been awesome. Today is going to be a special day. It's going to be our anniversary forever. But I think a day that maybe even more special than this for both of us is going to be December 8th, the first day we sat next to each other in a church. And it was a day that we know that God led us together, you know, in the same church, in the same place, in the same time, in the same row. And it was just something that we know God was at work bringing us together. And so that will always be a special day for us. Just thinking about the things that I love about you. I love your huge, big old infectious smile, your giggle, your bright eyes. I love your positive attitude and just your happy heart. I love how much you love Jesus. I love how much you love other people. And I love how much you love adventure, right? Like people may wonder if this was my idea. It was just as much her idea as it is my idea. I love your kisses and cuddles. I love that when we're talking about buying a pickup, you wanted to know if there was one that had a bench seat so you could sit closer to me and that you were serious. Like, how cool is that? I love that you're so faithful to stay in God's Word and study and just pray and journal and stay close and connected to Jesus. I love that you're just super kind and just watching you just live out your kindness as you treat people the way that you do. And it's just fun to think that this is just the beginning, right? Like we're just getting started. And so today is a day that I wasn't sure I would ever get to experience, a day that was going to require a pretty special person, a person I wasn't sure if I would ever meet. But long before hopelessness could settle in or before my doubt or worry could ever even begin to take root, in the very beginning, God in His kindness and mercy brought me to you, or you to me. We'll figure out who met who first later. But today I want to make you these promises. I want to promise that I will be faithful to you always, that I will love you and listen to you and keep chasing you, literally and figuratively. I want to promise to keep you laughing. I promise to be your friend and adventure partner. I promise to hold your hand and smooch you as often as you want. I promise to stay committed to Jesus and helping you and others become more and more like Him. And those are the things that I promise to you today on this super awesome, amazing day. Thank you.
Thad, when I think of all the things I love about you, it's a really long list. And if I listed them all right now, Ron would get really upset with us because he would be out here for a really long time. But I truly love absolutely everything about you. Absolutely everything. From the big things, like the way you love the Lord and the way you worship, to the small things, like how you hold my hand when we drive, and the way you laugh, all your little giggles, and your awesome bagel sandwiches in the morning. And when I was thinking of all the things, my heart definitely swelled with gratitude for all that you are and all that you do, and the precious gift that God has given to me when He gave me you. Today is a special day because I get to be your wife. And we get to publicly declare and put on display God's grace, His redemption, His love, and His blessing that have been at work in our lives to bring us to this point. Mm-hmm. On this special day, I promise to keep Christ number one and at the center of our marriage. I promise to pray for you daily and be your biggest encouragement. Mm-hmm. I promise to demonstrate sacrificial love that demands the best of me each and every day. And also to be the best possible, my mouth is frozen, the best possible helpmeet for you. These are the things I promise for you today and all the rest of our lives. I'm so excited for this next chapter, for all of our adventures, and for all of what God has in store. It's going to be so good.
So good.
They will now give each other rings of commitment to one another.
I give you this ring as a token of my love and commitment to you as we pursue God together.
I give you this ring as a token of my love and commitment to you. We pursue God together.
Theirs is a fascinating story of how God brought together two people in a kind of an amazing way. They have now committed themselves to each other before God and before man. Theirs has been a long-distance love story, and I believe there is more to this love story than just love, even though that in itself is wonderful. It's my opinion this couple is destined to become a Priscilla and Aquila, wife and husband team, spoken of highly in the New Testament. Priscilla and Aquila were totally committed to Jesus, familiar with hardship. They were trustworthy, diligent workers, and so strong in their faith that tradition has it that they were martyred even together. It could be said of them what is written in the book of Ecclesiastes, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their labor. I submit to you, friends of this couple, that Thad and Kaila are cut from the same cloth as Priscilla and Aquila. Let's close in prayer. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, we bless Thad and Kaila and commit them to your kingdom purposes. We pray for protection over their marriage and ministry together. May they experience your joy in walking out your destiny for them. In Jesus' name, amen. And it's my privilege now to announce before God and those of you watching that Thad and Kaila are now husband and wife. Go ahead and kiss your bride. Yeah.
Bye.